All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicholas Whitaker. I am on the News Lab at Google. I'm a media outreach manager focusing on education and outreach for journalists around the world. This is our third open office hours, which we're going to be doing these on a monthly basis. Today we have two very special guests, Isa Sonnenfeld in Germany. Hello, Isa, and Simon Rogers in San Francisco. Isa is a new hire. She just came on to the News Lab to represent us in Germany. Isa, you want to talk a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you're planning for the next couple of weeks?
Yes, of course. First of all, thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I just joined. I think I'm in my fourth week, so it's all pretty new, but I'm excited to be on the team. So my name is Isa Sonnenfeld. I just recently joined the News Lab team to lead our efforts in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And of course, I'm looking forward to work with journalists on the ground here, with media creators, with data journalists, with media startups and entrepreneurs to drive quality journalism and to think about new ideas in the media space. I come from Twitter. I was there for 4 years, heading news and government partnerships, and of course, the goal for the News Lab in Germany and the DACH region is to build on the amazing work the team has already done in the past couple of months. And if you have questions and if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at IsaSun. And we will do these kind of office hours also for the German language. So save the date for mid of November. It's the 25th of November where we will start our first office hour in the German language. And where I will give a News Lab overview about tools, trends, programs that we're going to run in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And of course, if you have questions and if you're interested to learn more about the News Lab in these regions, reach out to me. So I'm excited to be part of the team. And yeah, thanks, Nicholas, for having me on that call.
Definitely. It's good to have you. And if anybody's interested and wants to find more information about News Lab in general or other ways to reach out to us, if you have those questions or comments and want to participate a little bit more actively in these office hours, we're always looking for suggestions for new topics to talk about or just specific questions or frequently asked questions that people might have around specific issues. So you can reach us. You can find our site at g.co/newslab. All of our social media links are at the top of that page. We have a Twitter account. We have a YouTube account, obviously, and a Google Plus page. So any of those spots, you can definitely reach out to us there. Isa, during this first office hours, in addition to talking about News Lab more broadly and kind of your role there in Germany, are there specific things that you would like journalists to kind of pay attention to, like leading up to the next few office hours, or kind of more broadly things that you might want to shoot out to them?
Yes, of course, and I think that Simon will lay the foundations today because trends and working with data is, of course, a huge focus also for me in the DACH region. So I'm looking into partnering, of course, with journalists on the ground, with organizations to run programs in order to drive quality journalism and to better understand how to use technology in the best possible way. So data and trends will be probably my first focus during the first News Lab office hour in German language. So I'm looking forward to get feedback from German-speaking journalists, and especially around projects they are doing or special stories they are working on. So that's something that is hopefully building up over the next month and weeks.
Very cool. And you're planning on doing monthly office hours on a rolling basis, right?
Yes, exactly. So we're going to kick off in November. We're going to see if we are able to do an office hour in December based on, of course, some Christmas vacation. It's not summer vacation, Christmas vacations. But then, of course, it's a monthly office hour for 2016 that we want to roll out. And also based on the fact that our News Lab team is growing internationally, especially in Europe, we're going to see if there are even opportunities to do office hours in different languages, not English and German, but maybe even in French or Italian. So that's exciting news for us for 2016, and we're going to see how that works out.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And we have, as Isa was saying, like we're expanding. We have new folks in different regions in Poland and Italy and Spain now. So hopefully within the next few months, we'll be able to roll out additional office hours in different time zones as well as different languages. So if you're watching and you're interested to learn more about the News Lab or any of the various topics that we talk about, it will be very likely that there'll be an office hour close to your time zone soon. Thank you, Isa. Next up is Simon Rogers. Not coincidentally, also from Twitter previously. Simon is our data editor, is that correct?
Yeah, hi Nick, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm data editor here, which means I get to tell stories with data. I'm also doing this from home at the moment, as a parent of a 7 and 11-year-old. So I get to tell stories with data. I worked with Isa at Twitter, and where I was data editor there, telling stories with their data. And right now, I've been at Google for about 5 months, which technically means I'm still a noogler. But I've got the best job here because I get to look at all the kind of amazing data we have and work out the best ways to tell stories with it, and to work with great visual artists on showcasing that data as well.
Very cool. So Simon, we're gonna talk a little bit specifically about trends today. The last seminars that we did was focusing specifically on Geo, Google Maps, and Google Earth. So if you that hangout, you can find it on our YouTube page as well as our Google Plus page. This one today is going to be focused more around data and trends specifically. So tell us a little bit, first of all, for those people who might not already be familiar with Google Trends, in a nutshell, what is Google Trends, and how can a journalist best utilize that?
So Google Trends is very much kind of a real-time view of the world, and it's a view of the things that people really care about out there in the world. What you find is that, I don't know if any of you saw maybe Google Trends back in the summer before it was relaunched. It wasn't really real-time. It was 3 days out of date. And it was useful as a kind of historical research tool, but not really as a way for researching the news. And that's the big difference now. Now Google Trends is real-time. It means that you can use it to show how people react to news stories. And what I'll do is in a minute I'll show you guys the site and show you some of the things that you can get out of it. And there are some things about Google data which are really important and significant. The first thing is that it's big. So there are 3 billion plus searches every day. So it kind of takes you beyond the echo chamber of kind of public social media into this other world of the implicit insight of what people are really interested in and care about. The other thing about Google data is it's very instant. As soon as something happens in the world, there's a response in the way that people will search on Google. So you can see that during a debate or during an event, or when an awful breaking news story happens, then there's an instant response as people try and find out what's going on. And the third thing, which is kind of related to that, is there's an honesty to the data. As we all know, there are no dumb questions with your Google search, and often we use Google as a way to find out what's going on in ways that maybe we'd be too embarrassed to talk about otherwise. So, for instance, on the day we launched Google Trends, my daughter sent me an email asking what was bigger, the galaxy or the universe. Now I should know this. I've written a book on space, right? But for someone who had a mental block, so obviously I searched for it on Google, and that's what people do. They use the data use the search engine as a way to find out what's going on. You can really see that around the kinds of questions people ask around the big events. So what I'll do is I'm just going to share my screen, and I'll show you guys some of the things that we've got on Trends, some of the work that we've done on showcasing it. So here we go, and you should be able to see us all for a second, and then here we are. So this is the Google Trends site. If you went to it today, there's quite a lot going on here. The first stuff is all this stuff down here, which is really interesting. This is algorithmically driven. It's by a combination of searches on Google, searches on YouTube, and searches on Google News. And the idea is to find stories as they're bubbling up. So the top story there is the top trending story on Google in the US at the moment. If you go across all those signals, and when you click on it, you find out a bit more what's going on. There's some massive pile up on the 110 freeway this morning, and so instantly an event happens and it's reflected on the search, and you can see what's going on. And you can see what's going on here with search interest, and you can see what's going on here with news articles as well. This grey bars here are the number of news articles being published. Now, there's other stuff on there too. The interest obviously in California, because that's where the crash took place, and it's kind of got related stories there too.
And Simon, as far as the news articles and the various different columns that we're looking at here, it's a little bit pixelated just because of the
okay.
Casting here. But when someone's looking at the list of different trend examples here, that little graph over on the right-hand side, what is that actually representing for people?
So this is basically a spark line of search interest over time. So you can kind of see what the story is on its cycle. So this one, for instance, number 3 here on Carrie Underwood, there's a spike in the last 24 hours, just very recently. Now, I don't know what that is, but she's announced she's got a new tour, so that's why. What's interesting there is on this, if you can see this blue line here of search interest. The search interest is here, and the news articles are being written over here. So there's something interesting there where people on Google are starting to look for something before anybody in the media has picked it up. But essentially, this is a wire feed. This is a feed of breaking news stories. It changes all the time. So already that's changed. We've got a different number 1 story than we had a minute ago when we just looked at this.
So this is really a live, real-time kind of putting your finger on the pulse of what's going on around a particular region or around a particular...
Yeah, exactly. And we have this data for all of these countries up here. You can click on this and get this live, real-time feed of information, which is kind of cool. So and there's more stuff coming with this. We're going to have an auto-refreshing pop-out version that people can have in the corner of their desktops and can keep on top of what's going on. But then we have some other stuff going on here too. And up the top here, this kind of top third of the page, this is all content that we have curated ourselves. And the reason for doing that is because there's such a lot of variation in the trending stories feed. We want some things to hang around because we know that people care about them at the moment. And that goes from the sublime to the ridiculous, from Halloween to the debate this week or the World Series. And if you click on one of these pages, you get a whole set of curated content that we've made. So, for instance, we've got the top questions of the World Series. So what I said about there are no done questions, people asking who's in the World Series and when does it start and so on. People asking the basics. Top states, top questions on the Mets, and on the Royals. You can tell I'm a real expert on American sports. The most searched teams by state, and so on. And this content is stuff that we've kind of chosen what to show on here. And you can see we do little interactive maps too. So I'm just going to click on this, and here you've got a map that you can embed, it just shows the top searched team by US state and the Canadian province. And you've got the iframe code there. So often we're making things for people to embed and to use.
So I guess that actually leads to a really good question. Is what are the limitations around being able to use any of this data or the visualizations that we create? Like, let's say I'm a journalist, I work in a particular newsroom, I'm covering a story, maybe the World Series. How can I actually integrate this into my site?
So the data is designed to be used by everybody. We want this stuff to be out there in the world. In fact, later this week, there'll be a little button up here which will allow you to embed any of our cards on any website. It just gives you a little iframe code that you can stick on any blog or website, and including charts like this, which is real-time. These are real-time charts. So you can have that a live chart on a blog or on a website, or these maps, and they'll all be embeddable. So we really want people to use our data. In fact, I'm just going to show you, we have a GitHub page, which is where we have raw data sets, CSVs, of behind a lot of the visualizations we produce, and this stuff is there for people to download. It's there because we want people to play with data, and part of the reason we want people to play with it is because this is really new for people. The world hasn't had Google data to experiment with in the past, and we want people to play with it and see what they can do with it and show us cool things they've done with it, so we can be inspired by that as well.
So with trends and the data that's available right now, I don't just necessarily have to rely on the graphics or visualizations that the trends team puts out. I can also take the data myself, run it through another data visualizing program.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even, if say there's a subject you care about and it's in the news. So I don't know what's in the news today. Let's say the Afghanistan. Obviously, there's a lot going on there. So we have the Trends Explorer tool, which allows you to explore the real-time data that we have for yourself. So say, for instance, this is the Explore tool for Afghanistan. Say I want to just look in the United States, and I want to look in the last year. I can change that to there. And you can see this is the kind of the trend line for Afghanistan over the last year. And then we've got, let's say I'll make it the past 7 days, because there's obviously stuff going on in Afghanistan at the moment. Wait for that to load up.
So while that's
so you can see there, obviously the earthquake happens and suddenly there's a big spike in interest. You could say, right, I just want to look in the last hour, and you get minute by minute data, or the last day. And then with that comes a lot of other useful information. So for instance, there's geography here, and you can go down to these metropolitan areas or even city level. And you've got related searches and queries. You know, what else are people searching for when they're searching for Afghanistan? Obviously, earthquake is top at the moment. And here you have a download button, so you can download all this data as a CSV for people to do as they want with it.
Now, Simon, just one thing I wanted to mention too that you just passed over just a little bit. Like when you scroll back down to the bottom, related searches. You know, a lot of times when I'm speaking with journalists around the world, you know, they're interested in things like search engine optimization or optimizing the titles of their articles and making sure that they're using the right keywords. Can I use related searches in that way to make sure that I'm using the same terminology that people are using to search for a particular topic?
Yeah. So there are two things. I mean, behind all this is this thing called the knowledge graph, which is kind of what powers Google search. And basically, these are groups of topics. So, for instance, say you were searching for Lincoln. You know, Google wants to know whether you're searching for Lincoln the movie, Lincoln the president, Lincoln the car, Lincoln the town, and each of those areas is a topic, and that topic can encompass hundreds of keywords, thousands of keywords in different languages. It's an amazing way to search this data because you're not just searching with the term. You don't have to guess all the time the way that people might be searching around it. And this helps you work around that. So say you've got two things going on here. On the left here are related topics. So these are the topics that people are searching with alongside Afghanistan in the last day. And if you click that, you get rising ones which show what's happening at the moment. So there's obviously something going on with Afghanistan and Pakistan. And then you've got here, these are the big topics. And then here, these are the queries. There's the things that people are searching. So the biggest query that people are searching is Afghanistan earthquake. Makes sense. And then some people are phrasing that differently, earthquake in Afghanistan and so on. Are all trying to get at the latest stuff that's going on. The way that we all do, we finesse our searches all the time. And these things here are the rising searches. So these are the things that have risen, really shot up in the day that you're looking, the time period you're looking at this. So these are the fastest increasing searches. All of these things, I should say, are embeddable. See this little code here? That gives you a little iframe code that you can embed on a blog or a site. A lot of people will do this research. So say I do Afghanistan and Pakistan as a search here. That's the other thing. You can use this stuff to compare different things as well, and show how people, you know, how concerns have changed over time. So now there's been an increase in people searching on Pakistan. I don't know why that is. I'd like to know why that is, and that's often these searches will give rise to bigger questions that you'll want to look at.
So it seems like there's a couple different modes of use for trends as journalists. There's the visualization side of things, where you can actually modules, you can embed them in your story, you can use those as supporting evidence to talk about a particular topic. And there's also this research component too, where you can actually use trends as a way to find more out about a particular topic, or even just find what's going on in a particular region. I think Afghanistan's a really good example. You know, there was an earthquake recently. So obviously a lot of people are searching for that. Maybe I don't know a lot about it right now. Could I use this as a way to dig into that story in more detail?
Yeah, well, often what we find is that people use the Explore tool and it kind of identifies a story they didn't know about. So you could be searching about Afghanistan, some angle you didn't know. So obviously, there was an angle of something happening with with Pakistan, so you kind of think, well, has something happened with Pakistan today as well? What's going on there too? So there are a lot of ways you can use it to combine different terms to kind of get to the story. But also, the other thing I should point out is that this feed here you can see on the front, it goes on forever. You could, and I think you might find the most interesting stories are way down here. They're not at number 1 or 2. They're down at 114 or 122. And there's ways to identify stories that are bubbling up. This is kind of quite an interesting technique.
And then beyond this, the couple different features that you showed us recently, up at the very top there, I noticed there's a Halloween themed.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about that and how that?
So often what we do is we work with other teams at Google, and sometimes we work with designers outside Google as well to kind of visualize the data. So I'm going to show you. I'll show you a couple of visualizations we've worked with recently. This is something we did with Google's Creative Lab. And if you click on, and we've got a whole page on Halloween. If you care about Halloween, costumes, food, activities, this is the place to go.
Not too late to get your Halloween costumes, right?
I know. I still haven't got mine yet, which is a bit worrying. And here we go. And this this visualization we worked on with the team at the Creative Lab, and this is something around costumes. What are the top costumes by different area across states? You scroll across it and say, all right. So in Parkersburg, West Virginia, it's Star Wars, and then you have all of these costumes ranked underneath. Also, so actually, I'm interested in being a vampire. Vampires ranked 15 across the US, and has recently shot up to the top and stayed there consistently. You're very likely to see somebody else in a vampire costume at a Halloween party. In fact, vampire searches are very high compared to everything else in that category. And it's just a fun way of kind of exploring this data that shows this is, you're looking for a Halloween costume, you're probably going to search for it and search for different how to make it, or where to rent it, or where to get it. And the idea, when we make something like this, and you see this is the national trends, Harley Quinn is number 1, and you go right the way down through, see, it goes on for quite a while actually, down to, there's the top 50 on there, right down to Batgirl. And the idea is really to give people a sense of this kind of the scale of data around something that people have a lot of fun with this time of year. I can show you some other stuff we've done too. They're not always issues as light as that. We worked with an agency called Pitch Interactive on this project, where we were looking at climate change through Google data and the kind of questions that people ask about global warming, or the natural environment, or energy, or recycling, or the oceans. Around Google data. So we really wanted to give a sense of kind of the variety of data there is there, and you can see one of the interesting things about Google data is that it allows you to compare small places to big places. So, for instance, this town in Wales, Istradminac, is the top place in the whole world for searches on global warming, which is interesting because it's a town of 13,000 people, and that's because the figures that we get back are proportional. So we would get, so it allows you to compare this little town to London or to New York or wherever. And this is an interesting story, because part of the reason that it's so high there is because they had terrible flooding a couple of years ago, and suddenly all the schools are doing projects there on global warming and the environment. I'd show you guys a couple of other things too. So for instance, one thing about questions is they tell you really interesting things about the way people care about issues. So for instance, this is something we did with the Washington Post, looking at searches around gay marriage over time. And in 2004, 2005, they were kind of quite negative towards gay marriage, kind of against gay marriage, why is it wrong, questions like that. And around 2008, 9, 10, those questions started to get much more neutral. In terms of where is gay marriage legal? How do I get a license? You can see it on this little map that they put together. This is pink being negative searches and green being neutral. That was 2004. And 2015, it's kind of flipped around. There's definitely something interesting there about the way that questions can reflect changing kind of social attitudes. And we've also looked at things like this. This is showing searches in different languages in different cities. So say this is London, and let's say have Berlin, as we have somebody from each city here. And you can see how searches, and you switched off the main language, obviously, how search in different languages change over time. It tells a lot about immigration, about tourism, and all sorts of things like that. I'll show you a couple of things too. So this is something actually which hasn't been released yet, but we're just going to put this out today. And this is a county-level map of the top search Republican candidates by county across the U.S. since the last debate, which is something that Google's never been able to do these kind of county-level, this detailed level of data before. This is a new thing for us to be able to do this. And you can see the different counties, and red is Trump, by the way. And you can also see who's in second place, which is this map here, which is and blue is Ben Carson. So you can see he's very close in a lot of places. And then this map shows the changes since the last debate. So basically, the purple places that are still Trump, light blue places that moved away from Trump, and the red places that moved towards Trump. And we've also got this thing here, where we've animated the whole campaign so far, and basically the colours show, who's the top search candidate in each state, and you see them before Trump enters the race. It flicks around a lot between different people, and suddenly Trump's in, and it stays red for the entire rest of the campaign with a couple of other variations. It's very interesting when you compare Trump to Bernie Sanders, because these two outsider candidates are the ones who are getting searched a lot at the moment. So the idea is for us really to put together this kind of stuff. And when we make something like this, we're going to tweet this out later on today, but it's also embeddable. Like I said, we want people to be able to share it around and use it and embed it on their sites and use it to glean insights that we haven't even thought of around the election campaign.
Now, Simon, one thing you mentioned, that this is kind of a first to be able to drill down to the county level.
Yeah.
What, for the average user, like how far can they really drill down into a particular region or maybe into a particular time period?
Cool. I'm stop screen sharing now, haven't I?
Not anymore. I just see you.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, you can go down to, our data goes down to city level. And so basically, everything we get is aggregated. You don't get any personal information on this stuff. But basically, you start off, you can search globally, see what the whole world cares about. And then you can search down to nationally. And then within nations, you have regions. So in the US, that's states. In the UK, it's England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So we're trying to get a little more detail there. And then within the US, we have a bit more variety. You can do these areas called DMAs, which are metropolitan areas. And then you can get down to city level. So when we make that county map, for instance, what we have to do is we have to average. So we get 3 cities in a county or 3 towns in a county, average across those towns to get figures. And it's produced some really interesting work. So we have used this a few times around elections. In the UK, we did it with a constituency level. It's the top search leader by constituency. And that was interesting because all the polls were saying it was neck and neck, very tight between David Cameron and Ed Miliband. And so our map came in, and it was wildly toward Cameron. We thought, well, this is obviously slightly bonkers, but a bit of fun for people to see what's most searched in the area. And actually, our research was closer to the results than the polls were. And we found the same thing in the Canadian election as well. It showed the Trudeau effect very, very boldly. And we've even seen, so there have been some research done by there's an academic who's looked at the way people search around the Greece referendum in Greece and the same-sex marriage referendum in Ireland, and he reckons you could use the data to actually get an accurate sense of how people are going to vote.
So, that's actually really interesting too. Because there's a real tie between things that happen in the real world, and how people search for things online. And it seems to me like, at least from what we've seen in the past, is that there's a correlation there between what people are searching for and then how things manifest.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I think there's a thing where when you're writing about a story as a journalist, you presuppose a certain amount of knowledge among your readers, and actually what you realize is out in the world people are terribly confused about what's going on. If you looked at when Hillary Clinton was up in front of the Benghazi committee last week, the top question people were asking was what happened in Benghazi. Now, how many reports have there been saying exactly what happened in Benghazi, in the news and stuff, but people still don't really understand, how they still don't get it. So there is a real reflection in the data which allows you to see what people care about. And there's this kind of implicit insight as opposed to the explicit thing of publicly saying, oh, well, I care about this or I care about this. This is a reflection of what people are really, really caring about at that moment.
It sounds to me, too, like that's a really compelling opportunity for a journalist to be able to help better serve their audience. You know, if you can drill down into a specific region or a specific country
Yeah.
people are searching for, and then serve up articles or serve up stories that are helping to address some of those questions.
I think there's two things there that I think are really interesting. One of which is the potential for local reporters to do this, or for people who are trying to get a sense of the local variations in a story to use that data. And because in the past it hasn't been up to date, you know, there's been less use of it, I think, than there could be. And you know, the tools we have now allow anybody to pick that stuff up and use it right now. You know, they don't have to wait for us to do something. And I think the other potential is around trying to get a sense of what people really think about stuff, rather than people who are the most vocal, which is always the temptation. You know, you look at, you know, analyze the most vocal people in society. This way, you get to analyze the whole of society and look at what they really care about. And it could be about anything. You know, we did something where we were looking at, you know, the most and least places the most and least likely to search for different food types. So, you know, cocktails is you know, Seattle, and tacos is Austin. Now, we might know that anyway, but it's kind of nice that that data is proved by the way people search as well.
So, you know, one thing that you mentioned earlier that kind of stood out for me is, you know, that this is an anonymized information. This is anonymized data.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of journalists obviously are really concerned about ethics and really concerned about privacy. With this data, with trends data specifically, or search traffic, you know, if I'm an average user, I'm typing in my search queries, you know, is some random journalist going to be able to track that back to me somehow?
No, there's no way, because we don't even have all the data. We get a sample. That sample is around 15% of all searches, so it's not a huge amount, but it's enough when you've got 3 billion searches to be statistically relevant, and it's all aggregated. So we don't even get raw search numbers. What we get is this kind of proportion figure, which tells you there's a high proportion of searches coming from this place, or a low proportion of searches coming from it. And so if say you're looking for searches around Game of Thrones, say, you could find the town that's most likely in the world to search for Game of Thrones. We could do that right now. I might have to do that when talking to you. I'm so going to do that when talking to you. And you know, so you can do that. But what you're getting is that this town might have 1,000 people in it, but it's proportionally really likely, as a proportion of all its searches, to be searching for Game of Thrones.
And actually, why don't you let's project your screen. Let's share.
Let's just do that while we're doing that. So,
example, we could just walk it through, because I think the other question that I had is, like, how easy is this for a journalist to use? Like, do you have to be a data expert? Do you have to be, you know, a graphic designer, or can you just pull something together relatively?
So the idea is that anybody can use this, and we find a lot of people just doing this stuff themselves. They don't even come to us. This is Game of Thrones. This is worldwide Game of Thrones searches since 2004. I know it hasn't been around that long. And here you've got the region. The biggest searches are in Kazakhstan, is the country in the world which searches more for Game of Thrones than anywhere else. And Melbourne is the top city in the world for searches around Game of Thrones. Melbourne followed by Sydney. There's a whole Australian thing there. So you think, well, I don't care about the rest of the world. I only care about the US. So you can click on that, and then here we can see that Massachusetts is the top state, followed by New York, Washington, Pennsylvania, and citywide, that's New York, followed by Alexandria, Austin, San Jose, Portland, San Diego. You get a real sense of where people really care about this stuff. So, for instance, we've used this to look at where people watch different shows. So where people search for Stephen Colbert, say, compared to David Letterman. You get things like that, which I think are really interesting kind of insights into the way that people look around stuff. Right, I'm trying to come on. There we go.
So as far as like getting started with all this, you know, let's say I've watched this hangout, I'm super excited about trends now, and I want to go and apply this immediately to a story that I'm working on. What would you think? What would be like the easiest and kind of like fastest way to get up and running with this?
So I'm going to give you 3 things that I would do if I was looking at this. First thing I would do is go to the Google Trends site. It's google.com/trends. You know, there you've got a ton of content. You can click on here and see some of the things we've already done out there in the world. This is the US, but you can look, if you're not based in the US, you can look from other countries too. We have a data journalist in London who you know, make sure we've got London UK pages. We're working on getting this more countries around the world. So that'll be my first step. Second place, I would also have a look at the Google Trends Twitter handle. It's at Google Trends, and this has a real mix of these kind of quick hit things that we put out. So, for instance, a big question in the UK around the WHO processed meat cancer risk report. So, the big questions is what are the questions related to the meat to that report today in the UK, or and how tax credits interest the world. So, there's a lot of stuff that we do. We just put it out there for people to play around with and like. And some of these aren't things we'll have pages for. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff. We've got stuff there on the Argentinian election or on the Rugby World Cup. And then the third thing I would do is go to our GitHub page, which is it's googletrends.github.io/data. You can find it. You can Google it and find it that way. And on here, you've got a ton of subjects. All of these subjects. Let's say you're interested in the Emmy Awards. Here are a couple of data sets around the Emmy Awards. You download those as a CSV, and you've got the data that we have. Then there's no difference there. And here it is. Here is the top searched Emmy-nominated show by different metropolitan region across the US. Big battle there between Orange is the New Black and Game of Thrones, as you can see. So the idea is really to make our data as available as we possibly can to give a sense for people. We want people to play with them, and we want people to let us know what they do with it. Tweet us, come back to us, and say, "I've made this. What do you think?" And we can help with it. We can give advice, or we can help amplify it as well.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too. With any of our products, we cover quite a range of different products on these office hours, and with the outreach and trainings that we do. Anyone that's working with any of these tools, we love examples, both for educational purposes and using those to teach others, but then also we just want to highlight really great work. So as Simon was saying, if you're creating content, you want to share that, let us know about it. We'll help share that around with the rest of the world as well. Another thing I would mention too, with the Twitter feed that you were just showing earlier, those are really bite-sized kind of atoms of information. Very easy to share.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we do are images or animated GIFs. Whatever. I thought maybe what I could do is just share some of the stuff we did around the election debates. You can see the kind of stuff we're going to have out tomorrow. I'm just going to share my screen again. So let's go to the Google Trends site. I'm just going to go back to this. Here we go. So this is our general election page. To say, let's look at the last debate. So this was the Democrats the other day. This is the kind of content we put out during the night. It's a real mixture of things like these little quick moments or charts. These are real-time charts. You can see how the debate changed. That yellow is Bernie Sanders by. And then things like this little visualization here. This shows the candidates ranked during the debate. Bernie Sanders is number one. Number two, Hillary is racing up. We actually call this a horse race because you can kind of comment on it like a horse race. So we have that kind of content, and then things like this where we'll just tweet these things out and put them out there. What are the top questions? There were top questions there on Anderson Cooper versus Sheryl Crow in the opener because she sang the national anthem. And we're also working at other types of data too. So, for instance, this is something that we tried for the first time, which is where we're looking at if you search for a candidate, who else were you going to search for as well? So, for instance, if you search for Hillary Clinton, you search for Bernie, but after Bernie, it was Jim Webb and Martin O'Malley would search for Jim Webb after Bernie Sanders. Actually Lincoln Chafee, not Hillary Clinton. She's way down behind Martin O'Malley, and so on. So we're always trying to find kind of new data and new ways to surface it and make it more available. And so a lot, like I say, hopefully we're hoping, we're praying to the gods of technical development that by tomorrow we'll actually have these as embeddable things. So you can just iframe these and stick these on a blog, on a live blog, as an event goes on.
Now, Simon, and this might be more of a broader question about data journalism in general, but obviously a lot more people are doing searches on mobile devices, and there's a lot more just being done on mobile devices. Do you have any tips or suggestions for people interested in using Google Trends data or visualizations, targeting that type of an audience, someone that might be absorbing this or reading this?
Everything we do, we make sure it's responsive. So all those maps and embeddable visualizations, they all work on mobile very well. It's also partly why we do a lot of very basic images and GIFs and so on, because those are the easiest things people to share. But to be honest, everything we do is designed to work on mobile as well. And I think it's really important. What, like 70 or 80% of people will be reading content in that way. So it's really important that we kind of make it as accessible as we possibly can. But also partly, part of the reason why we publish the raw data, we want people We want people to use the data, but also kind of find better ways and new ways of doing it, and better ways to do it on mobile and so on too.
Very cool. So, you showed a lot of really interesting examples that were kind of more on the complex end of visualizations. As far as like getting started with this type of data and visualizing it, like, do they need to be very complex? Like, can you tell a story with a basic visualization?
I mean, to be honest, a lot of the stuff we do are just line charts and simple choropleth maps and so on. Obviously we want everybody loves to do things that are pretty and we're just keen to do that as anybody else. But obviously, we want to tell the story in the best possible way, and the best possible way can often be the simplest possible way. And that's true of data journalism as a whole. An interactive visualization isn't necessarily going to be a hit in the same way that a static one that's easy for people to understand is going to be.
Very cool. Now, one question we got as far as embedding this data on our website or within an article, if I embed one of these visualizations, does that update automatically if that data changes? Or
when this feature comes in, so if you embed an Explore tool one, it's kind of frozen in time. But with the new ones, if you embed one of those, it's a live visualization. You're embedding a live, updating real-time thing. This is why we're desperately trying to get it working before the debate tomorrow night. It's hopeful, but not definite yet. But it will be done this week, which is pretty cool, right? So it means that you can have one of those real-time live charts during the debate, and you'll be able to see one person going over another. So yeah, absolutely and now we have real-time data. It's nice to be able to use it.
And another thing to think about too, you mentioned that the sample is only about 15% of all searches is that for all searches in general? Is that just for 15% of a specific region?
No, so that's a random. That's a general figure. Some places be more, some places be less, but it's around that figure. It's not a huge amount. And the reason that basically there's just not enough room to store this data. They have to, you almost need a whole data center just to be able to do the real-time stuff. So, it's a lot of information, and what we were concerned about is getting the biggest statistically valid sample that we could get, which is what we have at the moment.
Now, if I was interested to dig a little bit deeper into that, as far as like the sample itself and what those figures mean, we were looking earlier, and you looked at a specific region, and we saw Donald Trump was at 100 for that selection.
Oh yeah, so our index numbers, yeah. So because the numbers, we don't get any raw numbers, so it's not you very rarely hear Google say there were X million searches for this or Y million searches for that. And part of the reason is because the data changes every day. One day there'll be more people searching and so on than there are the other day. So the figures we get are these kind of proportional figures, which again don't really mean anything. So everything's indexed between 1 and 100. 100 is like the peak, the top of the spike. You can see where the Afghanistan earthquake happened. That spike was at 100, and 1 is the lowest point. So it's great for relative search, and it's great for ranking one thing against another. You want to rank two people. This is very good data for that. If you want raw numbers, then it's not so great, but the raw numbers, I would say, are kind of less meaningful anyhow.
So it's really more about the comparison. It sounds like that's really when the data means, when you can compare two different elements and create that kind of distinction between the two.
Exactly. That's kind of what makes the data kind of compelling and intriguing, I think.
So if let's say that I was looking in New York City, I was looking within a specific topic within a specific time range, and I got 0. Does that mean that no one has searched for that particular term in that region?
It's unlikely that nobody would have searched for it, because there's not enough data. We have privacy thresholds. This is how I can't look at how one person's search. So because of those thresholds, that would mean that there's just not enough data registering for that search in that area.
Very cool. Yeah. So just talking about that index, like if 100 is like the most searches for that particular day in that specific region, that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing else was searched for. It means that
it just means that proportionally for that topic, that point was the peak of search interest. So it might be at 2:15 p.m. That was the peak of when people were searching for it.
Now, as far as like presenting this data, and really, for people that maybe aren't a data scientist or aren't kind of like steeped in the world of trend data, but they want to use that particular information, what are good ways to kind of talk about trends data without misleading an audience or misrepresenting that data?
So, I mean, there are a couple of things you could do. I mean, obviously, if you explore something in our Explore tool, then all of those charts are shareable and embeddable, and you could just use one of those. there are some great free charting options out there in the world right now. You know, there's things like Data Wrapper, or there's something else at the top of my tongue I can't remember. And there's Quadrogram, who just released something that's free, and there's Infogram. There you go. And then I'll remember it. All of these are really simple charting tools. We actually make it quite hard to be deceptive and deceiving. You know, make it quite hard to screw up, and that's quite a good place to be. I mean, I'm not a designer or a developer, and so I often use those tools as kind of simple ways to visualize something. I think the thing is to always bear in mind, and that's partly why the data we give people is this kind of proportional data, because we want to be accurate about it. We don't want to be kind of misleading. You know, we want people to understand what we're doing and make it clear and as transparent as we possibly can.
And if someone's doing a piece using trends data, like what's the best way to cite that information, or who would I actually attribute?
Attribute it to Google Trends, absolutely. You know, this is and if you embed any of the charts, it will say Google Trends in the corner anyhow. To be honest, it's in anybody's interest to do that. I would think you want to show how valid the data is, and it comes from a company that's they've worked really hard to make data as valid as it possibly can.
And as far as like data sources, so we're looking specifically within Google Trends and search data. Are there other things that, as a journalist, I can work within different sets of data that Google has available, or are there other?
So we've actually, part of our role is to open up new sets of Google data. So, for instance, we've worked with Waze, and we've done stuff. Waze is the traffic company that's owned by Google now. We've worked with Waze data, and we've also we're working with Google Flights data. The Flights team has some amazing data. There's data sets all over Google that would be interesting for a journalist to work with, I think. And we're trying to kind of explore those and make those visible. I also think there's something interesting about if you're being smart about mashing that data, the data that we have, up with other public data sets that are out there. And obviously, we have the Public Data Explorer, which you can use to download thousands of great kind of public data sets. Imagine if you put those against our data. Say you put searches for healthcare against GDP by state. Say that would be. I think those things would be really interesting. Those kind of comparing one thing to another with real-world actual data. So, for instance, the Economist is something where we're looking at searches across Africa, what people search for in different countries, and they basically compared that to the kind of colonial history of each country. And there was a real collection where countries that's been were French colonial possessions search for one set of things and British ones search for another, and so on. So there's I think the data is most interesting when you kind of bring it together with things that are out there in the world that are interesting anyhow.
Very cool. So we actually had a question that just came in. Was this from Twitter? From Twitter, thank you. That was from Steven. He says, is there any possibility of a Trends API in the future? And also, any BPs or PR teams that are citing Trends data?
So lots of people are citing Trends data. We're seeing even like when we'll collect data around, say the World Series, you'll find the teams themselves will often take our data and then cite it or do a bit of research on it. Jeb Bush used it the other week. So people are definitely kind of latching onto the significance of the data. In terms of the API, I would love there to be a Google Trends API, and we are working hard behind the scenes to explore all the possibilities around that. It's probably the best thing I can say at the moment. But as it is, you've got data that we're making as available as we can by the GitHub page, which you can follow. If you follow us on GitHub, you can actually get notified whenever there's a new data set on there. And obviously via the CSV downloads we have on the Explore tool as well. So yeah, absolutely. I think there absolutely should be an API. So we're just exploring all that at the moment.
Very cool. Now, if people have questions or comments, or if they're working on a project and they get stuck, what's the best way to kind of get guidance and how to move forward on that?
Sure, we're always available, so you can tweet us at Google Trends. There's also the Newslab Trends at google.com email alias, which goes to the Trends Data Journalism team, where we'll try and help out. We're always open, available, and really. Because basically, if you have a weird problem, it's probably going to help us with something that we haven't thought about yet. So absolutely, we're kind of aware of that stuff all the time as well.
And with feature requests and other types of other data sets people might be interested, would that be a good place to?
Yeah, absolutely. Start with that, and we'll definitely respond.
Very cool. And as far as like frequently asked questions, like what are some of the regular questions that you get about trends, or the things that people trip up on the most?
Um, so we often get asked about the 1 to 100 thing. What does that mean? We often get asked about, because it's not raw numbers, like, so where's the data coming from? How big is it? Often we get asked how many searches would it take to produce, like, to make something the #1 search thing on Google. Sometimes we get asked things which are plainly really about SEO and more about journalism. So, but I think increasingly part of the reason for this effort on our part is to really produce inspiration for people that are struggling with working with this data and thinking about what can I do with it. Because we're finding new ways as well. It's not like this has ever really happened before. This team is brand new. We've been doing this for 6 months, and I'm really excited to see what we get to do in the next 6 months.
Now, I just saw one of our previous posts on the @Google Trends Twitter page, a very disturbing story about bacon and processed meat. Carcinogenic. So I think it's a really interesting example. We're taking a look at World Health Organization risk reports, right? And
Yeah.
then people that are actually going online and searching about this, probably very frantically, to find out if they need to dump all of their bacon in their
Well, exactly, and it's funny because people aren't going on necessarily. The first thing they go on is ask the question as it affects them. They love bacon, and they're going on to find out what does this mean for this thing that I love. Which I think is a really interesting kind of insight into the way people care about stuff. And I think people will be unlikely to post that on the social media forum in the same way,
Everyone loves bacon. Now, as far as like additional training or additional education around this, just one thing that I wanted to mention, I'm gonna just present. Oh, actually, hold on one second. Actually, Simon, could you pull up the g.co/newslab page?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to have a perfect hangout going here, and I don't want to mess it up.
Okay, so I'll just share my screen, yeah?
Yeah, if you would. So what Simon's pulling up here, this is our g.co/newslab site. Here we have an enormous amount of information available about all of our tools. There's specifically a tab on this site called Data, and if Simon, go ahead and click on that, it'll tell you a little bit more about Google Trends. It'll show you examples from around the world of different journalists using Google Trends. There's also a documentary there about the future of journalism, talking specifically about data journalism. So if you're a journalist and you're interested in examining or moving into this wild world of data journalism, I would say that this is a really good place to start, just to get an idea of what's possible. I would also add to that, I think a lot of people get a little bit nervous when you start talking about data. It's like, I'm not a data analyst, or I'm not a graphic designer. Most of the examples that are being presented and a lot of the things that we're sharing on Twitter and on social media more broadly are pretty easy for an average journalist to wade into. You don't need a very deep background with any of this. But if you wanted more information, if you wanted to dig more into trends, Simon, if you actually click on the tools section there, on the site, you'll actually find tutorials on all of the various products that Google has. So there's a research, report, distribute, and optimize tracks. If you were to click on the research tab there and scroll down, what you're actually going to see are individual card-based lessons on various different products or features of products that Google has. These are really lightweight, so if you're in a low bandwidth environment or if you're on your mobile phone, you don't have to worry about downloading a massive video to watch these. They're actually pretty lightweight in that way. Most of the lessons are about 7 minutes or less, so you don't need to spend an enormous amount of time learning how to use these. And in fact, we're going to have about 4 or 5 more lessons coming out within the next couple of weeks specifically on Google Trends. So it's a really great opportunity to get up to speed with how to use those. We're also really interested to hear from journalists. So let us know what tools you're most interested in. If you have frequently asked questions, Simon, if you actually click on the YouTube link there at the top of that page, I'm sorry. Well, those are our YouTube lessons, which is also a really good thing to point out. But actually, the social media link up at the top there, you can get to our YouTube page, which has lots of frequently asked question videos on specific issues that come up from time to time. So if we get enough questions around a particular topic, we'll create a short video to help indicate how to best utilize that particular feature. And we're also looking for feedback on lessons more broadly. So if there's a particular topic that you're really, really interested in, some things that you can look forward to coming up in the near future, we're going to have some lessons on 360 video and YouTube. We're going to talk a little bit about virtual reality. We'll talk a little bit about story spheres, which is a new feature that has come out recently, where you can embed audio within a 360-degree panoramic photosphere. There's Simon's email. We'll also be doing other tracks around data journalism, around visualization, and a bunch of other assets there. So don't be a stranger, I guess, is the big lesson here. We'll be continually rolling out these office hours as well. So as Isa mentioned, the 25th of November, is that right? We're going to be doing another German language office hours. Isa, remind us what time that one's going to be.
So it's going to be 10 a.m. Central European time, and we'll probably have a special guest as well to talk not only about NewsLab, but also about Digital News Initiative and the Innovation Fund that was just launched last week. So yeah, 10 a.m. on November 25th.
Very cool. And we'll be announcing the next English language NewsLab office hours sometime later on this week. Likely will be very close to the end of the month, although we do have Thanksgiving here in the United States to contend with, so we might have to juggle that around a little bit. But to look forward in the future, the plan is to help kind of orient these office hours around the same day and close to the same general topic. So if you're a journalist and you're interested in, let's say, 360 YouTube 360 in VR, at some point in the near future, we're going to be doing a hangout on that, and we'll have that in multiple languages throughout various different time zones. And also, just a reminder, all of these office hours, as well as our FAQ videos, as well as short documentaries and inspirational pieces, are all available on our YouTube page. Also available, you can find us through Google+, and if you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to us on our social media. Also find us on g.co/newslab. You guys have anything else you wanted to add in?
I think you mentioned everything.
So just, like I say, follow us on Google Trends and check out our GitHub page for the latest kind of data sets for you guys to play with.
Very cool. Isa, thank you very much. I know it's a little late there. I appreciate you jumping in and joining us to talk a little bit about your new role and what we're going to be doing in Germany coming up. Simon Rogers, thank you again for digging into trends with us today. Look out for additional assets and additional Google Trends examples on our Google Trends page. And again, stay in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.